it's Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, this is Ivy Slater. Welcome to today's episode of Her Success Story. I'm thrilled to introduce you to a friend, a colleague, somebody who I have come to really respect out there as women, as a woman leader, as a businesswoman, a mover and shaker. Antoniette Roze is a celebrated speaker, agent, and esteemed CEO with over 30 years of industry expertise. She commands authority in transforming hidden gems into household names. She also hosts an amazing show, SPEAKPact, where she passionately navigates the realms of success, leaving an important mark. I'm just going to say my thing is, Antoinette, as we've talked about your show, the important mark on thought leadership in industry, which is just a big piece of where both of you and I stand. So thank you for joining me here on Her Success Story.
Thank you for having me, Ivy. I'm super excited about today because I know every time we talk off the record, we go deep and always come up with some pretty transformative insights, even for each other. So very happy to be here to share some of those, to dive into some of those with your audience.
So let's take a step back before we go forward. 30 years as CEO. There's only so many people, I will tell you, I speak to who's been in this leadership game, women's leadership, and been a CEO for as long as we both have. So how did that come about for you?
Necessity, really. Number one, I knew that I was
Touché.
Right. I grew up in a world where we lost our father pretty young. So my mom was left with a 5th grade education to raise 4 of us on her own, and just watching.
Not easy.
No, and especially in the time that she did it, women just were not paid as well as they are now, and it was a man's world for sure. In those earlier years, and just watching her tenacity and her making something of nothing, and her work ethic, all of the above, put a drive in me. So I watched her do that. I also watched her. Just metaphorically, boots on her head, right? Those powers that be kind of holding her down when she had so much more to offer. So I guess at a really young age, and I was a young entrepreneur, and I've just kind of hit the ground running with that. I've worked for larger corporations. I worked for Porsche Cars North America. I've worked on and off in other corporations long enough to know I don't love this. I want to create my own.
It's not your jam.
Nope, not my jam. So I just started with whatever I could in creating my own path. And you try and fail, you try and succeed. You try and fail, and you try and you succeed even more because of the past failures and the past successes. They all kind of add up. And it's all culminated into a pretty incredible career that not only am I proud of, but I know is doing some really good work in this world. And so I can't ever, if something crazy and tragic happened, all that I compact with, all of this that I come with, I probably would not be able to get a job just because conformity isn't a thing. So I think that the greatest CEOs and entrepreneurs, especially women, come from a place of probably not wanting to be an employee, but really wanting to forge that whole path and dive into the ideas and concepts and strategies that they want to put forth in the world, that has a bigger drive within them than to maybe climb somebody else's ladder.
I think, as you're talking, I'm thinking about my early stages as my path in the journey of running, several companies in the last 30 years. And I had a strong desire to be the master of my own destiny. I was like, I want to do things my way. I want to make things happen. And I love what you just said because it's so spot on, Antoinette, of you do something, some of it works, some of it doesn't. This kind of failed, but it's actually not a failure, it's a learning curve. And so you take it to the next, and then you expand on that. And, there has been numerous moments of what I'll say, brilliance that were shot down so fast. And from that was the next piece of brilliance. And I always thought about it, for myself as a dancer early on. I was like, I know I fell on my butt numerous times when I was trying to get a spin, a leap, a move, or whatever. And I always just looked at business like, okay, so I fell on my butt. I'm going to get back out and I'm going to figure this out.
Brilliant. And I love that because that's that warrior woman spirit, meaning if somebody tells you you can't, or if you fall down and fail for whatever reason, you never fail until you give up. You only stumble, right? So if there's a stumble
I
in
love
there,
that. You never fail until you give up. It's a stumble.
mm-hmm.
Listeners, if you take anything away from that, write that down. That is spot on.
Let it fuel you, right? When somebody tells you you can't do something, or if you stumble, or if you are your own enemy and just questioning your own ability, let that be your fuel. Find a way, under, over, around, however you need to do it. That's really the mark of a woman who is going to be successful, that there's just no stopping her. I love your show, Her Success Story, because that brings together those. I can't show me a high achieving woman, show me a successful woman, and she will be able to communicate more of those stumbles, more of those heartbreaks along the way than the success itself, right? It's a journey, and you always have to have that end in sight, that I can do this. Doesn't matter what happens away on the journey, along the way on the journey, I can do this and I will do this. There's no other option. And for me, that was it. There was just there was no other option, because I knew I was not going to sit at a desk at somebody else's cubicle, right, for my life. And I also knew I'm just an independent spirit. So I wanted to make sure that I had those freedoms of independence. So what's the next best thing? Personal success.
Create it.
Yeah, create it. Create that
I always say
success.
create it.
Yep.
I have to ask, okay, so you have built, you're a speaker agent, you've done PR, you've done so many things how at different times, right? So you and I have led our businesses in different paths and made different, I have to say a word I'm not a big fan of, but I do use at times, pivots or adjustments, which is a word that I'm like, okay, we're just going to adjust a little bit to the right here, how have you navigated the adjustments of leading the business, and where are you today?
Oh, excellent question. So there always has to be a through line, right? And that through line is, what's the backbone for everything that I'm doing? What's the structure, right? Of why I'm even doing what I'm doing. Mine comes from an early childhood experience that made me want to ensure whatever I did with my life make some sort of difference in the arena of making sure that everyone knows what their best options are when they're making a life decision. And there's different parts of that, right? Information, connection, networks, all of the things, opportunities. So when my college degree is in business management, PR and marketing, and computer information systems. Back in the day, when just to turn the computer on, you needed to know code. That was the only class I got a C in, and I was proud of that C. I was A's across the board otherwise in college, but computer language, you may as well just was not in.
It is a different language.
But just to turn the computer on, it was at / whatever, just to start the computer. And in that journey, I knew from the get-go that I wanted to make sure that everybody had access to information. And this was again in the days where there was talk of some sort of interweb, but
Okay.
not really clear. And we certainly didn't think we'd be carrying it in our pockets one day. So right out of the gate, pretty much right out of the gate, I started producing. And I just figured that was the way, right? I was going to produce events, bring people in from all over the world, and they would be able to those who were seeking that knowledge would be able to come and get some answers, get some insights. I did that for, golly, 18 years, over 18 years,
Okay.
to where they grew to very large scale events. I became very well known in that and loved it. I was very proud of it. One of the big things I became known for is being able to spot and recruit onto my stages hidden gems who had a lot of curated knowledge, who had a lot to bring to the table, but maybe they didn't even consider speaking, or they were an introvert and didn't feel like that was something that they wanted to step into. So I created those spaces, put them on the stages. And then there came a time where my grand beauty count started raising. I think we're up to a dozen or more. I really need to sit, as a grandmother, I really
Ooh,
should know this.
I'm expecting my first. And I'm so excited about it. I can only imagine a dozen, and how we want to, at these stages of our lives, still being young women who have a lot of, I'll speak for myself here. I have a lot of things I'm still excited to accomplish.
Yeah.
Yet I've always valued family time, and I want to create things back to the beginning of why we started businesses. I wanted to create things my way. I continue to want to create things my way. And that's what I'm hearing you've done.
Exactly. And I'm glad you brought the family piece in too, especially for women, right? You think it's either or. You're either going to go after your career or you're going to really focus on your family. And I didn't want the either or. I was a young single mom and I wanted to be the one raising him. But I also wanted to provide a really great life for him. So, and I wanted to travel and I wanted to homeschool, like all the things that just don't seem
And,
to make
and,
sense.
and.
Exactly. And the only way that I was able to accomplish that, all of that, and he's a beautiful, I mean, he's just such a beauty. I'm so proud of, um, is creating my own path. I like the way that you said it, basically be the driver of my own limousine, right? Or if I wanted to be a Jeep, whatever it is that I wanted
Whatever
to
it is,
be.
if it's the Porsche, the Jeep, the limo, Suburban, whatever it is,
Yeah.
I get to choose it and I get to drive it my way.
And I get to choose who's in it with me, right? And
Correct?
I wanted my son there with me every step of the way. I wanted to be able to model by example. And boy, he's, the talk about schooling, the schooling that he got, just seeing my work ethic and how I made something from nothing pretty much every step of the way. Um, I think what a gift to not only your children, but your grandchildren. And that's what I want for my grandchildren now. I mean, I'm very active. We love to go on explorations together and do all the things. And they know that Nona, I'm Italian, so Nona,
No, no.
her mornings, she's working and they see that. And sometimes they'll come and color right next to me as I'm doing it. But I want them to see that. I want them to see you can have a beautiful career and fashion that around the life that you want to live. Really,
It comes down to understanding who you are and your values.
yeah.
At least speaking for myself, is I remember when I was transitioning from owning a printing company to starting Slater Success. And I would say to my kids, I was like, okay, tonight when you guys do homework, I actually have some homework of my own to do. Like, well, what are you doing? I was like, well, I'm working on a new business. And we would all sit around the table and do our work.
Mm,
If I
love
was
it.
reading something, I'm going to sit down and do some reading. For my homework, anybody have some reading to do? And so it became an inclusive part of running a business, developing another business, raising children in an inclusive way versus I have to work now, give me some time. I never approached it that way. And it sounds like you didn't either.
Mostly I didn't.
Yeah.
Sometimes I did, and I really wish I would have had that spirit more. Luckily he was just very imaginative, and he would always create on his own.
Nice.
But there were times when I'm just like, I got to get this. I'm on a deadline or
Yep.
whatever. And you know what? I think even there's some lessons in that for our children
I
and
think there are.
grandchildren. Mhm.
I think there are. There were nights I was on press, and it just, mommy has to be where mommy has to be.
Yep.
So let's look at the business you're working with now, and what you're doing with speakers, and how you've transitioned from running the shows and developing the young gens and still staying with the values of developing young gens and getting it out there, but shifted your business model.
Okay. So got to the point where these mega events were highly demanding, as anybody who's ever produced an event knows. And my health, like it was a beater upper. They were highly successful, but it was also in a space where I had to be very picky about who could sponsor my events. So I didn't have the big sponsorships. So we did these massive events on skeleton crews. And most companies would have a full crew on for a year to put even just one of these events on. So I loved them, but I knew sustainably it was just taking a lot out of me. And then things happened. I was getting more grandchildren. My mom was aging, and I wanted to be able to take a bigger part, take a bigger role in her care. And just, some of my interests were shifting as well. One of the things that I was noticing was in these big events is I would put these hidden gem speakers on the same stage as 2 to 3, depending on the length of the event, seasoned speakers. And I saw the contrast where in the heart-centered world, right? Because if you're a speaker, you want to get that knowledge out there. There's an art and a science to doing it in an effective way and to monetizing the microphone so that you can continue doing it. You do good, you get to do more good. So it was kind of heartbreaking to see some very well-intentioned, brilliant speakers get on my stages and just kind of pour the whole pot of pasta on everybody's head all at once because they knew they needed it all, right? And I know, what do we do, right? Somebody can be feeding us our very favorite meal in the entire world, but it gets to the point they keep bringing us those dishes and we're like, that was
Only
amazing.
taking so much.
Not one more bite, right? And that's the last way you want to leave your audience. You want to leave them with that bowl of nourishment where they've digested it, they've felt it, it's transformed them in some way, and they're like, okay, Ivy, where's my next bowl coming from? Tell me.
And
How
I
can
I want to come back for the next, right? You served up, a la vodka today. I want to come back tomorrow for the lasagna, right? I want to come back the next day for the ziti.
Exactly.
Right? We want people to have enough to want, just enough to want more and feel the transformation.
Exactly. So I saw an opportunity there from putting these hidden gems on my own stages versus really investing into them so that they can become those bigger thought leaders and putting them on other people's stages. So that was the big shift about 8 years ago. And that's what I do now. So I have a speaker agency, the Wellness Productions Company, and I am a speaker agent, with a much different model because I have the vantage point that is pretty unique from both sides of the aisle, where actually I work with high achievers. And I love working with high achieving women, especially because the playing ground still is not.
I want to go here a little bit because I want to talk about, you and I have been around the block for a while, and we saw in our early days, and Antoinette know each other, and I know each other enough that I feel comfortable like throwing you under the bus right on with me.
Okay.
In our early days, it was a very male-dominated business world, CEO world. And we were the exception to the rules, and we really had to own our space and lead with strength. And I know for me, I was like, I'm going to be part of the change. I am going to be part of the change. There has to be change. There has to be evolution. There's always evolution. I'm going to help.
Amen to
15,
that.
20, 30 years later, where are we in the speaking realm of male and women, men and women? Is it an equal playing field? Is it still unbalanced? What are you seeing, and how can we continue to educate around here?
It's getting better, but it's definitely not where it needs to be, for sure. For example, and it's getting better not just for women, but that's a big part of it, but really anybody outside of a white male. And I love white males. I love all kinds of humans, right?
Yeah.
But predominantly when it came to speaking and thought leaders, history shows you
It
it
was
was
a boys' club and a very white male boys' club for a very long time.
exactly. So even now, especially if you're speaking in corporate settings, L&D, or bringing in your program into the corporate, even on some of these bigger stages, conference settings, seminar circuit, though doors are definitely opening up for women like they never have before. And it's to continue and to perpetuate that and to grow that, we need more women voices out there and stepping up to the plate. There's still an inequality of what a male speaker will get paid versus a female speaker that will get paid. So how have we navigated that? Let's say I'm just as qualified or maybe even more qualified than the male counterpart that's getting on to the stage. He's making $20,000. I'm making $15,000. No real good reason why. It just is. So, okay, how do we get around this? Women are inventive. We're innovative. So we create the audience revenue. And we definitely outperform on the audience side of the revenue because we know how to connect with our audience. It's not an info dump, it's a connection, and it draws the right people to us to work with us at a higher level. So on the one side, the curse is the gift, right? Because we've had to bust through that. So success-wise, I'm seeing women rock stars as speakers. But if you were just solely a keynote speaker going to get the host checks, there's definitely a discrepancy still there.
What are we doing today to start shifting things? And more importantly, what can women do? Because I think, as I stack my questions, and I know that, in talking about it, even if we're talking about speaking today, you and I, it's an example of what anything we do here can be replicated in the other industries. So what can women as speakers do? And then let's see how that could be replicated in other industries, more on equality and equal pay.
I love that. Show up and be loud about it. Like don't apologize for what you bring to the table. Show up fully, even if it seems like not your likely space. I've seen women keynotes talking to truckers, like that is their space. They speak to truckers on excelling their trucking business, right? Obviously traditionally a man's space. But there again, it's that innovation and tenacity that women just naturally have. And do it loud, not obnoxiously, but unapologetically. So the more that we get our voices out there and are heard and seen, the more ground we're breaking, and the less that kind of inequality can really survive.
Yeah. I have to ask you, what has surprised you in this journey?
What's kind of made my heart sad in some levels is knowing that you have this golden box of gifts, right? This curated knowledge from your years of accomplishments and keeping it locked in a box because you don't feel like you're charismatic or you're maybe timid about getting on stages, whatever it might be. Keeping that locked in a box so that when you graduate to the next level of life or you retire, all of that is locked away with you. That is basically also fueling my mission. Just open up that box and make sure that that knowledge gets heard wide and long. And something I do want to really quickly before we wrap it up here encourage is you can never outgive. There are people in this industry who are so worried about their IP being stolen or their intellectual property being stolen or just keeping things to their chest. Well, you, Ivy, you and I can maybe read from the very same script, right? We have the very same PowerPoint, have the very same presentation, but you're going to connect with the audience much different than I am because you come with Ivy and all of your backstory and your point of view and just your way of communicating versus me. So you may be able to steal the script, but you're never able to steal the product, meaning don't worry about giving away your curated knowledge because it will only help your company. And I think this is a big difference between men and women. Know that you're going to get your message out there and you're going to do it live and large and generously. And you're going to exponentially grow way more than maybe that male or female counterpart who is only going to give ever so much, right? And they're going to keep the rest to their chest until they get hired for the rest. There's always value in hiring you. You could give your entire blueprint away. And most people who are serious about the thing are going to say, excellent blueprint. I want you to take me there. I want to lock arms with you and have you take me there.
And that's the interesting thing in being in my business for as long as I have now, and Slater Successes, I don't know, we're like our 16th year or something like that, quite a while. And I will say, download all, this is how we see how strategic planning and succession planning come together. Did this, and these are the 7 bullet points, right? And people are like, no, you should just give them 3 so that, and tell them if they want the other. I was like, this isn't brain surgery, guys. This is, to me, like so much common sense. And then they lean in and it's like, but wait, can you come in and can you walk us through and help us develop and then work with our leadership team? Can you run our retreats? Can you do this? Or right? So we can get there. I was like, absolutely. And that's exactly what you're saying. I 100% ever believe in holding back. I believe the more generous we all are and the more we help one another, and that's including our peers,
yeah,
the further we will all go.
Amen. Yeah, so agree with you.
So before we close, what is one tip or piece of advice you might leave for other CEOs, leaders of organizations after your 30-year legacy and still going strongly, I will say, because you just started another initiative, which I do want you to mention, right? What is that one piece you would leave?
Choose a lane. Decide what is the core, that spinal cord that I was talking about earlier. Decide what that is, because we all have, especially as women, right? We have many different interests and we have many different talents. There's a lot we can bring to the table, but choose what you want to be known for, what you want your name to be synonymous with. You'll get to make the influence and dabble in the other areas. It just will come organically. But unless you're known for your one main contribution, you're really kind of known for nothing. Like, yeah, I heard Ivy speak and she was incredible. I really liked her. I can't remember exactly. Like, they should immediately be able to name off the transformation that you brought them and know that you're the one that they're going to go to or point other people to for that thing, right? So we all have our favorite restaurants. And when we go to our favorite restaurant, we usually have our favorite dish in that restaurant. And
Absolutely.
if I go to that restaurant and I order my favorite dish and they're like, "Oh, we got creative today. We switched it up." I'm like, "Don't switch it up. My chops were all set for this particular dish for this particular reason. Don't mess with that." Right? It's really like our brand, like our core archetype, what that message that we're putting out there. People need to know how to explain you in one sentence and very clear. So work towards that. And that really comes from doing that heavy lifting, that foundational work, not just in the beginning, because as you meet your milestones and you're growing professionally, personally, your vantage point is changing. So you need to recheck into the foundation and micro calibrate. So there's never this massive switch of, oh, I was all about this, but you know what? My interests changed and now I'm hopping on over here. If you're micro calibrating along the way, then you're not losing audience. You're only gaining and building on that persona of who you are, and that brand of who you are and what you bring to the table. So know who you are, know what you stand for, and know that you're in it for the long haul. Don't confuse yourself and don't confuse the public.
Touche. Antoinette, share your new show that that's out there, because that is exciting. Again, you're still innovating, and that's what I adore about you.
Thank you for that. And innovate. Yes, please keep innovating. Just don't divorce your core. Know what that backbone is that's holding it all together. So I have a new show that I'm not exactly sure when this particular episode is releasing, but February of 2024, SPEAKPact launches. It's SPEAKPact, and I'm sure you'll put the link in
Everything's
the
going to
show
be in the
notes.
show notes. Yeah. Listeners, have no fear, spelled out where you could just click away.
And essentially, that's my pact with you. That's my pact with the world to get our voices out there and be known in a bigger, broader way, not for ego, but for true impact. Not only for affecting other people, but also impacting our own world through the revenue that we bring in, operating at that higher level. So I bring together very well accomplished speakers along with the bookers who actually put those speakers on stages, and we just get those deeper insights on how did you do it? What's the secret? How come some thought leaders become household names and others really struggle and circle the mountain for years and years? What's that secret sauce? So speakpact.com is where you can find that. And then if you are a voice, you are somebody who has accomplished much, and you know that you have more to share with this world. Maybe you want to step away from the day-to-day of your work and you want to step more into the thought leadership, let your team kind of run the day-to-day. Then go to speakerbooker.com, and set up an appointment with me. I would love to talk with you about that and see how we can get your voice out there in a bigger, broader way. And if you happen to be a producer, that's the same place to go to say, hey, I want some of your speakers on my show. Then we can have that discussion as well.
Awesome. Antoinette, I can't thank you enough for joining me here today on Her Success Story and sharing your stories that make a huge impact.
Well, thank you for the work that you do, Ivy, and I'm so thrilled that you invited me in.
So listeners, this is always what I say at this point in the show. Take a moment and take a breath. Think in our conversation, what was meaningful to you? What your aha, that takeaway was. Find one thing, one nugget. Write it down somewhere. If you're a writing person, make it a Post-it note, a notepad, whatever it is. If you're a tech person, drop it in notes in your phone or wherever it works for you. And then make a decision. What is the one action you're going to take based on this aha or takeaway? My wish for you is every Her Success Story gives you an action. In the actions, we all make a difference. Thanks for joining me here today, and see you next time with more great interviews and conversations.
Ciao, ciao for now.